Well, hello everybody. Right now we've reached 1996, but I want to go back a bit to 1992 because that's the year that I bought this.
I step off the train.
So despite the fact that I've been talking about me for the past, what I was doing all the past years, I haven't actually properly mentioned the photography aspect of my life, which is probably the biggest thing in my life right now, and was even back then. Before I bought this being the Olympus OM2 Spot program, I was using Olympus cameras already. The Olympus OM1, it was for me slightly different from the other, from its contemporaries. The main difference being that the shutter speed dial was around the neck of the lens as opposed to on the top of the camera, like it was with virtually all the other cameras. While this didn't make that big a difference in shooting, it just meant that I could change. It just means to me that you can change both the apertures and the shutters and the shutter speeds with the left hand almost at the same time while you're taking pictures. The 2 Spot program was very similar. Well, it was virtually identical, except this is electronic, while this, the Olympus OM1N, is fully mechanical. It does have batteries in it, but the battery is just for the meter, and you can use it without the meter and still get good exposures if you know what you're doing. So why did I get this one instead? Well, I felt like I needed a change, like most people often do, and I went into the camera shop. This was Jessop's in Bradford, and the Olympus OM2 Spot program was sitting in the window. So I said, so I went in, asked to have a look at it, and they took it out the window. And even before he told me anything about the camera, I put it up to my eye, and it was quite the revelation, because it's unlike the previous models. It's got a little LCD liquid crystal display in the viewfinder that tells you the shutter speeds and apertures, and gives you the general information that you need to get good photographs. I knew exactly what everything meant, even without being told. I used this camera for the best part of 5 years, from 1992 all the way through to 1996 inclusive, and it never let me down, except it let me down every single time I took it out, because at that time I was going to gigs almost every week, from Bradford into Leeds, or gigs in Bradford and so on, and I'd start taking pictures, and within 5-10 frames in, the camera would just die. The battery would go flat. So I'd either change the batteries, because I learned to carry a spare pair, or I switched the shutter speed dial to the red numbers. You've got a red B for bulb, and you've got a red 60, and in those modes the camera's in mechanical, so it allows you to take photographs even when the batteries are flat, which I think is a nice override. Why was it happening? It turns out that the camera before it, which is the OM2N, it used electronics made by Casio, but with the OM2 Spot program, Olympus took the design of the electronics in-house, so they did it all themselves, and there must have been a design flaw in on the circuit boards that caused some kind of short circuit, which meant the batteries were draining a lot quicker than they should be. So if you're ever using an Olympus OM2 Spot program, always take the batteries out in between uses, even if you still have film in there, because otherwise you were changing batteries every time you take it out to take pictures. So what kept me using this camera? Well, I understood the information the camera was giving me through looking through the viewfinder, the little bar graph and so on. Coupled with that, it handled really well for me. Unlike the previous models, you've got this little grip on there, which can come off, but I never took it off. And this was an optional extra as well, which at the time was annoying. But then you could buy them brand new for about less than £10 for this little thing. So I thought, why not? The shutter is fairly quiet, quieter than a lot of its contemporaries. The other main reason that I stuck with this camera was the Olympus lenses. Unlike a lot of its contemporaries, such as the Canon and the Nikon cameras of the time, the lenses are quite small, a lot smaller than you'd expect for a camera of this type, and they're also superb. Optically, they're just really sharp, really good, really everything. All these photographs were taken with the OM2 Spot program, mostly with the 50mm 1.8. Though for a while I did have a 50mm 1.4, which was even sharper than this one, but those lenses are quite sought after, so I sold mine after a while and made a nice little profit on it. So, but then I did need the money though. Anyway, so the basics of the camera. So on the top of the camera you have, from left to right, you have the film rewind knob. You lift it up, pull it, and it pops the back open. Around that you've got a lever which has 3 settings and the battery check mode. So manual spot, so in manual spot the camera is in full manual operation but only in spot metering, and spot metering was very accurate, so you could use that for getting the perfect exposure on a particular subject. Next to that you've got auto, and in automatic the camera is using center weighted metering, and automatic in these cameras means aperture priority. And the third setting you've got program. Now in program mode the camera is setting both the aperture on the lens and the shutter in the camera. So in the middle you've got a hot shoe, which is where you put your flash. This is dedicated to Olympus flash guns. On the right you have the exposure compensation dial, which also incorporates the ISO ASA settings. And so the lowest ISO is ISO 12 for super slow film, and the ISO setting goes all the way to ISO 3200, which I used a couple of times with the Kodak 3200 ISO film. And then to the right of that you've got the shutter button, there it goes, and the rewind lever. In between that you've got the little button marked R, and you press that to unlock the mechanism so you can rewind the film. And that's your basics really. Like all the Olympus cameras from the OM2 onwards, the metering was done off the film. It used a system called OTF, off the film metering, where the metering that you see when you're just looking through a viewfinder is basically given by sensors in the prism section here. But when you're taking a picture, the metering is taken from reflected light off the film itself. So if you need a long exposure, for example, you take the picture and light reflected off the film would be captured by the little sensor in the bottom of the camera, just down there below the mirror, and when the camera had determined that enough light had been reached, it would close the shutter and you'd be fine. And this will particularly well, particularly in low light. And while the shutter speeds in manual only go up to 1 second, in automatic I'm not sure how long the maximum shutter speed was. I've heard that there's people would put it into automatic on an evening, at night, whatever, and take pictures, and you know the camera would just keep the shutter open for as much as 10, even 15 minutes. So, and you'd get the correct exposure. Should you buy one? If you don't mind carrying a spare set of batteries with you everywhere you go, because the batteries will drain within a couple of weeks, month at most, instead of the usual a year and a half or something like that, then yeah, you may want to have a look at the Olympus OM4, which will also give you spot metering. It's a bit more sophisticated than this, but optically they're identical. So why do I like this camera so much? I just do. That's a really pretty camera. Worked really well, as long as I had spare batteries with me. So along with the 50mm lens, 1.4 or 1.8, I used to use the 28mm alongside it. So that's camera and 2 lenses, and the 135 telephoto lens, because those were good for the stuff I was doing. This kit here was perfect for everything. So I get wide angle group shots with that, the nicely framed portraits with this, and the close-up portraits with that. All these lenses are like super sharp and quite beautiful. They're all small, compact, everything you want from a good camera. I was very happy with it, you know. As I said, I used it for over 5 years. Well, I used 2 of them for about 5 years. I lost one of them on a train. I got off the train in Bradford, forgot, but I left the camera on the train, Went back to try and get it. Train had gone. Didn't see that camera again. Fortunately, I was able to get another one from the same dress-ups in Bradford within a couple of weeks, and just continue my Olympus Home 2 Spot Program adventure. So yeah, that's me talking about one of my favourite cameras. Maybe I should give a more in-depth review of this camera, something a bit more scripted perhaps, because I'm just making this up as I go along. Wouldn't it be amazing if Olympus decided to bring out a special anniversary version of the One, but with a full frame digital sensor in there? You don't need a screen in there, you know, just put the sensor in there, have it exactly like this, even have it mirrorless if you want. I reckon it's doable, but that will be up to Olympus. Anyway, that's it from me today. The normal series will continue tomorrow. But until then, see ya.